She laughed when I presented my idea. 3 minutes later, the CEO took her hand and said, "Brilliant." But I sat there, silent, because I knew, come next quarter's board meeting, I'd twist every word she spoke into the noose around both their necks, and I wouldn't need to lie. I'd just need them to turn on the screen. My name is Rachel Hayes, and I've spent 12 years building strategic frameworks that saved Nexora Systems from bankruptcy twice. Not that anyone remembers that now. The Monday morning, Greg returned from his sabbatical in Portugal, started like any other. Coffee at 7:30, emails sorted by 8, preparation for the 9 o'clock strategy meeting complete. What I hadn't prepared for was the 20-something blonde perched on his arm like an expensive accessory, her Louboutins clicking against our practical office floors. "Team, I'd like you to meet Sienna Martinelli," Greg announced, his hand possessively on her lower back. "She'll be joining us as creative director, bringing fresh perspectives from her experience in lifestyle branding. Lifestyle branding. At a medical software company, I kept my expression neutral, fingers steady on my laptop keyboard as I documented every word. "I'm so excited to revolutionize how we think about healthcare tech," Sienna gushed, her voice pitched like she was selling makeup tutorials on Instagram. "I've been reviewing some of the existing proposals, and I have so many ideas." The meeting proceeded as expected. Department heads presented Q3 updates. I delivered my comprehensive 5-year strategic roadmap, 47 slides of market analysis, implementation timelines, and projected ROI that I'd refined over 3 months. Greg nodded absently, his attention clearly elsewhere. Then Sienna stood up. "Actually, I'd love to share something," she said, connecting her rose-gold MacBook to the projector. "I stayed up all night working on this." My slides appeared on screen, my exact slides, except the header font was now in cursive. The background was millennial pink, and the title read, "Sienna's Vision for Nexora's Future in Glittering Text." "As you can see," she continued, clicking through my meticulously researched data points, "I've identified key market opportunities in telehealth integration, AI-assisted diagnostics, and partnership expansions with major hospital networks." Word for word. Greg's eyes lit up like she'd just discovered fire. "This is exactly the fresh thinking we need. Brilliant work. Sienna, absolutely brilliant." The room erupted in the kind of sycophantic applause reserved for CEOs' favorites. I sat perfectly still, my fingers typing notes beneath the table. Meeting timestamp 9:43 a.m. Original presentation file created June 15th, 2:23 p.m. Last modified by R. Hayes. September 12th, 11:58 p.m. Sienna Martinelli's first day today. "Rachel," Greg's voice cut through my documentation, "I'd like you to work closely with Sienna to implement her vision. Your experience with the old systems could be helpful for context." Old systems, the systems I'd designed, the infrastructure I'd built from scratch when this company was hemorrhaging money, and Greg was too busy with his first divorce to care about quarterly reports. "Of course," I replied, my voice steady as steel. "I'll make sure every detail is properly documented." Sienna's smile was victorious, already dismissing me as another middle-aged woman she'd stepped over on her way up. She had no idea that I'd spent a decade in this industry learning that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with receipts, timestamps, and irrefutable proof. As the meeting adjourned, I made one small adjustment to our shared project folder permissions. Nothing dramatic, just ensuring that every file modification would be tracked, logged, and backed up to my personal cloud server. "Great meeting, Rebecca," Sienna chirped as she passed my desk, not even bothering to get my name right. I smiled, saved my files, and began building the paper trail that would bury them both. The restructuring began 3 weeks later, wrapped in corporate buzzwords like innovation and agile transformation. Greg sent the announcement at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday, that coward's hour when executives drop bombs and flee for the weekend. "To better align with our forward-thinking vision," the email read, "we're excited to implement a new organizational structure that emphasizes creative leadership and fresh perspectives." Translation: Sienna needed a kingdom, and we were the subjects to be rearranged. Marcus Chen from Product Development. 15 years with the company was the first to go. "Pursuing other opportunities," they said. Then Linda from marketing, who'd built our brand from nothing. Early retirement. Dr. Sarah Williams, our chief medical advisor who'd ensured our software actually worked for healthcare professionals. Consulting role, as needed. My turn came on a Tuesday morning, delivered with a smile by Sienna herself. "Rachel, we're so grateful for your institutional knowledge," she said, perched on my desk like she owned it, which, technically, she now did. "We're transitioning you to a new role that really leverages your attention to detail." She slid the paper across my desk. Senior Strategy Director to Data Reporting Support Specialist. Same salary. For now, they weren't stupid enough to invite a lawsuit, but the message was clear: crawl into your corner and wait to be forgotten. "It's really a lateral move," Sienna continued, her voice dripping fake concern. "You'll be supporting the strategy team with back-end reporting. Very important work." I signed the paper without argument, noting the timestamp 10/17. What Sienna didn't know was that I'd already documented every project, every system, every line of code I'd written that kept this company running. More importantly, I still had admin access to the financial reporting system, a detail buried so deep in legacy permissions that even IT had forgotten about it. That afternoon, I received an email from Sienna, CCing Greg and the entire leadership team. "Team, as we modernize our approach, I wanted to address some concerns about our transition. While we value the contributions of long-standing employees, we must acknowledge that some perspectives have become relics from a different age. Our future requires leaders who understand contemporary digital landscapes, not those clinging to outdated methodologies." Relics from a different age. She'd actually put it in writing. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then spent the rest of the day transferring my files. Not stealing everything I copied was my own work, properly attributed and time-stamped. Every strategy document, every financial model, every piece of intellectual property I developed, all legally mine under the employment contract I'd negotiated years ago, when Greg was too distracted to read the fine print about employee-created innovations. The next week, I was locked out of the strategy team's Slack channels. The week after, my keycard no longer opened the executive conference room. By month's end, I was effectively invisible, just another middle-aged woman shuffled aside for someone younger, blonder, and sleeping with the right person. But invisible people see everything, and I saw Sienna presenting my 5-year plan to the board, watched her take credit for the partnership with Columbia Medical Center that I'd cultivated for 18 months, observed as she mangled the implementation timeline for our AI diagnostic tool because she didn't understand the technical requirements. Each mistake, each lie, each stolen idea, I documented them all. Screenshots, emails, file histories, building my case with the patience of someone who'd learned long ago that the best revenge requires evidence so overwhelming that denial becomes impossible. Late one evening, working alone in my reassigned cubicle, I made a small adjustment to the financial reporting system. Nothing malicious, just a new authentication protocol that would flag any report using unverified data sources. A safety measure, really, due diligence. If someone tried to present falsified numbers or claim credit for work they didn't do, the system would simply request source verification, complete with original timestamps and author attribution. It was 11:43 p.m. when I finished, the office empty except for the cleaning crew. As I packed up, I noticed Sienna's light still on in what used to be my office. Through the glass, I could see her struggling with the quarterly projections, her face twisted in frustration as she tried to understand the formulas I'd built. I could have helped, could have explained that the predictive model required specific data inputs, that the variance calculations were tied to historical performance metrics she didn't have access to. Instead, I went home and updated my LinkedIn profile. Status open to opportunities. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for her to walk into it. The systematic erasure of my existence at Nexora began with small indignities. First, my name disappeared from meeting invites. Then, my email was quietly removed from department distribution lists. By November, I'd become a ghost haunting my own career. "Oh, Rachel, didn't see you there," Sienna would say whenever we crossed paths, her voice pitched with false surprise. "Are you still here?" Always that pause before "here" loaded with implication. The Monday before Thanksgiving, I arrived to find my desk relocated to the basement. Space optimization, according to the facility's email sent at 11:58 p.m. the night before. No windows, no ventilation worth mentioning. A concrete tomb for corporate has-beens. But Sienna had made a critical error in her campaign to bury me. She'd forgotten that I'd built the dashboard systems she now relied on. From my basement exile, I watched her log in each morning at 9:15 a.m., fumble through reports she didn't understand, then copy my analyses wholesale into her presentations. The Partnership Expansion Framework I developed in August became Sienna's strategic vision. The AI integration roadmap I'd mapped over 2 years transformed into her revolutionary digital initiative. Greg ate it up. Of course, every Monday's leadership meeting featured another round of praise for his protégé's brilliant insights. Sienna has brought such fresh energy to our strategic planning, he announced during the all-hands meeting in early December. Her innovative approach to healthcare technology partnerships is exactly what Nexora needs to stay competitive. I sat in the back row, invisible among the junior analysts, documenting every word. Every slide she presented contained my watermarked code in the metadata invisible to the naked eye but legally traceable. She'd been too lazy to even rebuild the files. The isolation campaign intensified. My parking space was reassigned to a spot behind the dumpsters. My name was removed from the company directory, due to a system error. When I submitted my required monthly reports, they were returned unread, marked, "Please route through proper channels I no longer had access to." "It's nothing personal," HR Director Janet Morrison explained during our mandated check-in. Her eyes focused somewhere over my shoulder. "We're just streamlining communications through the new structure." Janet, who I'd hired 6 years ago, who I'd mentored through her first pregnancy and promoted twice, now she couldn't even look me in the eye. But while they were busy erasing me from the present, I was preserving the past. Every original file, every email chain, every piece of evidence that showed who really built Nexora's strategic framework. The beauty of being ignored is that no one notices when you're working. Late one night in December, I discovered something interesting in the system logs. Sienna had been trying to access the historical project files, the ones that would show the true origins of her ideas. But she kept hitting permission walls. In her frustration, she'd submitted multiple override requests, each one time-stamped and logged. She was getting desperate. The Q4 board presentation was approaching, and she needed to present a 3-year strategic plan. Without access to my historical models, she was flying blind. I could have felt sorry for her. 26 years old, in over her head, reduced to stealing work she didn't understand. But then I remembered the email she'd sent to Greg, accidentally CC'd to the wrong Rachel Thompson in accounting. The old guard is holding us back. Rachel Hayes especially, she's like a fossil, clinging to relevance. Once we phase her out completely, we can really modernize this place. Fossil, phase out, like I was outdated equipment to be decommissioned. That night, I made one final adjustment to the system. A simple authentication protocol. Any presentation using strategic models would require verification of the original author. Not immediately, that would be too obvious. The prompt would only trigger during screen sharing mode, when it was too late to back out. I also sent a single email to board member Patricia Blackwood, an old mentor who'd served on multiple tech company boards, just a friendly holiday greeting, with an attachment. "Thought you might find this interesting, my original strategic framework for Nexora. Developed last spring. Looking forward to seeing how it evolves in the upcoming board presentation. Time-stamped, documented, indisputable." The stage was set for the quarterly board meeting. Sienna had spent weeks preparing her presentation, while Greg preened about his girlfriend's revolutionary vision for the company. The board had blocked out 3 hours to review the strategic plan that would guide Nexora's next phase. I submitted my request to attend the meeting as a data support specialist. Someone needed to run the AV system. After all, it was approved without question. After all, who pays attention to the help? As December wound down and the meeting approached, I felt an odd sense of peace. They'd taken my office, my title, my parking space. They'd tried to erase my contributions and steal my legacy. But they'd forgotten one crucial thing: you can't steal what you don't understand. And Sienna was about to learn that the hard way, in front of the people who actually mattered. the week before the board meeting, I worked with surgical precision. Each move calculated, each piece of evidence positioned exactly where it needed to be. The trap wasn't just about catching Sienna in a lie, it was about making that lie impossible to deny. First, I embedded authentication markers in every strategic model stored on our servers, not visible during normal use, but programmed to display source attribution when files were projected in presentation mode. A simple metadata function that IT had approved years ago for intellectual property protection, forgotten in some dusty compliance manual. Second, I created my paper trail, printouts of every original file, dated and stamped by our internal document management system, email chains showing my development process, meeting notes from strategy sessions, approval signatures from the previous board, all stored in my personal files, with copies sent to my attorney just in case. The masterstroke came on Tuesday evening. While reviewing server logs technically still within my data support responsibilities, I noticed Sienna had been desperately trying to access my archived project folders. 17 attempts in 3 days, each one blocked by permission barriers. She needed those files to understand the financial projections for the board presentation. So I helped her, sort of. I created a public archive folder with selected files my original work, clearly watermarked with creation dates and author information, but I made sure the formulas were locked, the pivot tables password protected. She could see the results but not manipulate the underlying data. If she wanted to present my work, she'd have to present it exactly as I'd created it. Wednesday night, I ran into Tom Bradley from IT in the parking garage. We'd worked together for 8 years, survived 3 rounds of layoffs and 2 merger attempts. He knew what was happening to me, everyone did. The basement reassignment wasn't exactly subtle. "Heard you're running AV for the board meeting," he said, carefully neutral. "Someone has to make sure the projector works." I kept my voice equally flat. He paused by his car. "You know, the new projection system has some interesting features. Automatic source verification, real-time fact-checking integration, very advanced." "How fascinating." "Yeah, especially when presenting financial data. Any spreadsheet or model that gets screen shared automatically displays its metadata, creation date, author, modification history. Board insisted on it after that embezzlement scandal at MedTech Corp last year." I must have missed that update. Tom smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen directed at me in months. Funny how people forget about infrastructure when they're focused on appearances. "Good luck with the meeting. Rachel." Thursday morning, I sent one more email, this time to David Kim, our external audit partner at Deloitte. We'd established the relationship 2 years ago when I'd identified discrepancies in our revenue reporting. Just a friendly note, mentioning that I'd noticed some unusual patterns in our quarterly projections and suggesting he might want to pay special attention to the source data in the upcoming board presentation. Professional courtesy, nothing more. By Thursday afternoon, Sienna was in full panic mode. I could see her through the glass walls of my old office, hair disheveled, surrounded by printed spreadsheets she couldn't decode. Greg had been in and out all day, his usual swagger replaced by something that looked almost like concern. She tried one last desperate move. At 4:37 p.m., an email arrived in my inbox. "Rachel, I could really use your expertise on some technical aspects of the quarterly projections. Would you mind walking me through the back-end calculations? I want to make sure I present your work accurately to the board. S. Your work. In writing, after months of claiming it as her own." I waited exactly 1 hour before responding, CCing Greg and the entire leadership team. "Dear Sienna, I'd be happy to explain the strategic models I developed over the past 2 years. However, as a data reporting support specialist, I'm not authorized to provide strategic consultation. Please route this request through proper channels. I've attached my original documentation for your reference, including creation dates and development notes. Best regards, Rachel." Attached 47 files, each one time-stamped, watermarked, and indisputably mine. Friday morning board day arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully my best suit, the one I'd worn when I'd saved the company from bankruptcy the second time. Professional, understated, forgettable, perfect for someone whose only job was to click through slides. As I set up the AV equipment in the boardroom, I allowed myself a small smile. Everything was in place, the authentication protocols, the metadata displays, the paper trail, the audit warnings, even Patricia Blackwood's printed copy of my original strategy, sitting quietly in her leather portfolio. All I had to do now was press play and let Sienna's own words unravel the truth. The trap was perfect. She just didn't know she was already in it. The board members filed in at 9 a.m. sharp. Patricia Blackwood, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, nodded at me briefly, the only acknowledgement I'd received in months. David Kim from Deloitte was there too. Tablet in hand, ready to take notes. 5 other board members, all serious faces and expensive suits, settled into their chairs. Greg entered with Sienna on his arm, both radiating false confidence. She wore a white designer dress power color for someone trying too hard. Her hands shook slightly as she arranged her materials at the presenter's podium. "Good morning, everyone," Greg began, his CEO voice booming. "We're excited to share our revolutionary 3-year strategic vision, developed by our brilliant creative director, Sienna Martinelli." I stood in the corner, invisible in my role as technical support, finger poised over the presentation remote. "Thank you, Greg," Sienna smiled, clicking to her first slide. "What I'm about to show you represents a complete reimagining of Nexora's market position." The slide appeared my work, with her name plastered across the top in that ridiculous cursive font. But something else appeared too, a small text box in the corner. Auto-generated by the projection system. Original file created by R. Hayes, 03/15/2024, 2:23 p.m. Last modified by S. Martinelli, 01/09/2025, 11:47 p.m. Sienna's smile faltered. She clicked quickly to the next slide, speaking faster. Our telehealth integration strategy focuses on partnership expansion with major hospital networks. Another attribution box appeared. Source document Strategic Partnership Framework V2.XLX. Author Rachel Hayes. Creation date 06/10/2024. Patricia Blackwood leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. "Excuse me, Sienna, could you explain these attribution notes?" "Oh, those..." Sienna's voice pitched higher. "That's just..." Rachel helped with some data entry, basic support work. I remained silent, watching her dig deeper. "Data entry." David Kim spoke up, scrolling through his tablet. "Because I have here an email from Ms. Hayes dated June 10th, outlining this exact partnership framework, sent to the leadership team, including you, Mr. Morrison." Greg's face was turning an interesting shade of red. "There might be some confusion about roles." "Let's continue," Patricia said coolly. "Please show us the financial projections." Sienna clicked to the next section, her hands visibly trembling now. The moment the financial model appeared on screen, the authentication system kicked into high gear. Warning: unverified data modification detected. Original model author Rachel Hayes. 73 formula cells altered without documentation. Source verification required. "What is this?" board member Richard Stern demanded. "Are you presenting falsified financial data?" "No, I updated some numbers," Sienna stammered. "Updated based on what?" Patricia's voice could have frozen water. "Show us the source data." Sienna clicked frantically through her files, but every document she opened triggered more authentication warnings. Creation dates, modification histories, a digital trail of theft laid bare for everyone to see. "Perhaps," I said quietly from my corner, speaking for the first time, "I could help clarify." Every head turned to me, the invisible woman suddenly visible. As the original author of these strategic models, I can explain the calculations, though I should note, several formulas have been incorrectly modified, which would result in a 14% overestimation of projected revenue. "You wrote these?" Richard Stern asked. "Every line. I have the development documentation, email trails, and approval signatures from the previous board reviews. I sent copies to Ms. Blackwood last month, anticipating there might be confusion about attribution." Patricia smiled, pulling out the printed files from her portfolio. "Indeed, I've been comparing these original documents to today's presentation. It's quite illuminating." Sienna's face had gone from red to white. "This is..." "Greg told me to update the old presentations. He said they needed fresh perspective." By putting your name on someone else's work. David Kim's voice was ice. That's not fresh perspective. Ms. Martinelli, that's intellectual property theft. Greg tried to salvage the situation. Now, let's not overreact. Sienna has brought valuable creative input. What creative input? Patricia cut him off. Changing fonts, adding pink backgrounds. Mr. Morrison, we're looking at 2 years of strategic development, stolen wholesale and presented as original work. Did you know about this? The room fell silent. Greg's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I need to see the real numbers, Richard Stern demanded. Ms. Hayes, can you present the actual strategic plan, the one you developed? I looked at Greg, then at Sienna, her white dress now seeming more like a surrender flag than power dressing. I'd be happy to, I said, moving to the podium. Though I should mention, as a data reporting support specialist, I'm not sure I'm authorized to present strategic materials to the board. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Consider yourself authorized, Patricia said firmly. In fact, consider yourself reinstated to your proper position, effective immediately. Mr. Morrison, Ms. Martinelli, please remain seated. We have questions, many questions. As I pulled up my original presentation clean, professional, accurate, I caught Tom from Aita's face on the conference room camera feed, grinning from his desk. The authentication system had worked perfectly. Sienna slumped in her chair, all pretense abandoned. Greg sat frozen, watching his career implode in real time. Now, I began, clicking to my first slide. Let me show you what Nexora's actual strategic future looks like. I didn't need to raise my voice. The facts spoke with devastating clarity. This is the original strategic framework, developed over 18 months of market analysis. I began, my slides clean and precise. You'll notice the revenue projections are conservative but achievable based on actual partner commitments, not wishful thinking. Each slide built the case methodically. The telehealth partnerships I'd cultivated, with signed letters of intent that Sienna hadn't even known existed. The AI diagnostic tool timeline, aligned with our actual development capacity. The financial models that accounted for market volatility, something Sienna's updated versions had conveniently ignored. The 14% revenue overestimation in Ms. Martinelli's version, I continued, highlighting the discrepancies, stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of our cost structure. She assumed a 40% margin on enterprise contracts. Our actual margin, after implementation and support costs, is 26%. David Kim was typing furiously. This explains the irregularities we flagged in the preliminary review. The numbers didn't align with industry standards. Because they were fantasy, Patricia said flatly. Ms. Hayes, show us the partnership pipeline. I clicked to the next section, displaying emails and contracts Sienna had never seen. Columbia Medical Center, signed last August. Mount Sinai Health System, in final negotiations. Cleveland Clinic, pilot program launching next month. Total pipeline value, $87 million over 3 years. None of this was in the materials we received, board member Janet Crawford interjected, glaring at Greg. That's because Ms. Martinelli didn't have access to my secured partnership files, I explained. She was working from outdated public folders, trying to reverse engineer strategies she didn't understand. Sienna finally found her voice. This is sabotage. She's trying to undermine me because she's jealous. Jealous. I turned to face her directly. Of what? Exactly. Your inability to read a P&L statement, your confusion about the difference between gross and net revenue, or perhaps your innovative strategy of putting your name on documents you found in shared drives. Enough, Patricia commanded. Ms. Hayes, continue. I presented for 45 minutes, each slide revealing another layer of Sienna's incompetence and Greg's complicity, the partnership she'd claimed to be developing with Kaiser Permanente. I showed the email where they'd explicitly rejected her approach as uninformed and unprofessional. The revolutionary AI integration she'd promised would have violated 3 FDA regulations and opened us to massive liability. In summary, I concluded, the strategic plan Ms. Martinelli presented would have bankrupted Nexora within 18 months. The actual plan, the one I developed, positions us for sustainable growth and market leadership. The room erupted. Mr. Morrison, Richard Stern's voice cut through the chaos. Do you have any explanation for this fiasco? Greg's attempt at damage control was pathetic.